I still want to know, how did you, from reading books and being curious about NLP, then started sharing a stage with Paul McKenna and Richard Bandler?
Okay, so there is a sort of a sequence there. I met Paul when he was a radio DJ at Capitol and I was doing voiceovers. And he used to come into the Mystic Trader bookshop where I worked. So we met as a couple of guys. I didn't know who he was, particularly. And we just got on and became friendly and sort of had nothing to do with work. So it was quite funny that I was also very good friends with Michael Breen, who he used to work at Changes. Mm-hmm. And so we'd become good friends. And I always feel bad to this day. I wasn't the one that introduced them. But I was already teaching. And when they started teaching together, I would come in sometimes and do some teaching with them. And then, like I say, around 1999, I'd kind of had it. The world, that was the time when it got really political. And my acting career was going well. And I just retired. I just thought, I'm not up for this. I'll still help people if I can, but it's not fun anymore. And I don't know. I wasn't, maybe I wimped out, maybe I was smart. But I dropped out. And Paul came over to the States a couple times because he was doing some infomercials. And we met up and he was interested in the coaching that I was doing. And he did a couple of sessions with me and it really, really helped him. Like, he was blown away. And he was like, we need to teach this. So he brought me back to London to teach. And we did, what did we call them? It was Coaching Success, I think we called them. We did a couple of big events, just he and I. And he was trying to get me to come back and do the NLP stuff, because Michael was moving on and, they needed somebody. I didn't want to do it. I kept pushing other people. I would say, have you tried this person? Have you tried this person? And Paul's very persuasive, and he finally convinced me to come over, and I found out later had to do just as much convincing to get Richard to let me, because I hadn't really met Richard, except I introduced Richard. So it was my one experience of Richard. The first time he came and spoke in the UK for Paul, and for whatever reason, they asked me to introduce him. I to this day don't know why, but I did, and I wound up...
You American.
I know. And I wound up telling light bulb jokes as part of his introduction. And I remember, I think it really did go down like this. The payoff one was, how many mice does it take to screw in a light bulb? And the answer is 2, but don't ask me how they got in there. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Richard Bandler. So I think it was probably the strangest introduction he's ever gotten. But that was, we didn't know each other. I was in awe of him. Yeah. I'd learned a ton from him through books and audios, but I didn't really know him. So there was a sense of, being brought to meet the Godfather, and fortunately it was interesting. One of the things that I so respect about Richard is, after all this time, when he won me over, actually, not that it was his job to, but when I kind of decided, oh, you're all right. I walked into the sort of green room for the trainers, and he was signing certificates. Now, we'd have like 500-600 people on those trainings.
Yeah.
And I said to him, and I didn't mean to be rude, I said to him, you sign your own certificates? And he looked at me like, like he can, and said, I don't just sign them, I love them. and he was talking about, he literally puts energy into each signature, and I could see that, and I went, oh, well, you've been doing this 30 years. Oh, that's really cool. And so that's when I decided, politics be damned. If I can do this, I'm going to do this. And we had a great run. I mean, that was an amazing, amazing time. And, we overlapped a little bit there.
One of the things I've always admired you, Michael, is that over the years is that I've seen how you have kept evolving and how you've become who you are now, which is kind of considered one of the best coaches in the world. Yeah. It is thanks to that, is how much you've continued to learn. So tell me, tell me about your journey from then onwards.
I didn't know I was still on one. At that time, it was like, everything's great. This is great. Happily married, great kids, lots of money, good job. And, Nina and I would have what I called our annual fight. So we'd been together, we're 25 years now, so I don't know what it would have been then, but a long time. But every now and again, we'd get into it about something, because we're human. And a friend gave me a book to read called The Relationship Handbook. And I hate relationship books as a rule. I think they're great if you wrote them, but I don't know how well they work for other people. But I read it, and I really liked it. There was nothing in it where I thought, oh, but there was a lot of things in it where I went, that's it. I've never thought about it like that before. I read it on a Monday. On the Friday, the friend who loaned it to me said, what did you think? And I said, oh, it was great. He said, how are things with Nina? I said, great. He said, what about the fight? I said, what fight? He said, you guys were really arguing about, were we? I just got Bernardo, 2.5, 3 minutes. I couldn't remember. And then when I did, and that would have been one thing. We can do that with hypnosis, right?
Yeah.
but when I did remember, it still didn't seem like a big deal. And then when I talked to Nina about it, it still didn't seem like a big deal. Yeah, there was something we had to resolve. We resolved it. But it wasn't what I thought it was, like a big conflict. And so same thing as when I turned down the volume, I was like, oh, that's weird. I need to learn more about this. And I did the same thing. Now, there wasn't much resource then, but I called everyone I could. I mean, literally, you had to write letters to people. I don't know if you remember, you used to do that. To reach them, call, and anyone who would talk to me, I went up, I had them work with me, and I had a great moment in 2007 where Paul was very excited about this. He and I were talking about it because he could see that something was shifting in me. And he said, go find out what they do, because they kept saying, well, no, we don't really do anything. And we're like, oh, yeah, you do. You just don't know. So I went up to work with a couple of people, George Pransky, Dr. Keith Blevins, who sort of helped found the field. And I sat with them, and they didn't seem to be doing anything. Now, nothing seemed to be happening either, so I wasn't that impressed yet. Well, the second night I was up there, I was watching a DVD of Sid Banks, who's a Scottish welder who got enlightened and was sort of the philosopher behind what I do. And he just said something so simple that I'd heard before. But he said, every human being has innate mental health. And I was drinking a beer while he said it, and I, like out the nose. I don't know why, but I heard him. I got that was true even about me. And that was that moment I talked about at the beginning where I went, oh, I've spent all this time trying to not be depressed. And my second book, I was literally 10 days away from going out on tour to promote it, which was all about how to do stuff to handle your depression. And I suddenly saw beyond a shadow of a doubt, I was born happy. We were all, no, babies don't need therapy. We learn to be unhappy. And the truth is, the second we stop thinking the way that we've learned to think, we're right back to the default. That was both the best news I had ever had, because it meant I wasn't damaged and didn't need fixing. It was more like waking up from a dream. Like even if you have a nightmare, you don't have to go back after you wake up and fix what happened in it. I just woke up. And it was terrible because I was about to be on a book tour promoting something that I could now see was fundamentally incorrect. So I got through that. But I was never the same, and my work was never the same, because I could never look at somebody and see them as broken anymore. And I'd paid lip service to that. I mean, I'd said, oh yeah, you're not broken, you just have bad programming. But I hadn't seen how fundamental it was in me that I was broken, and how fundamental it is in so many of us. That, well, yeah, we can become higher and higher functioning, but underneath it all, it's still pretty turmoil, still pretty messed up. And I don't have a better word for it than blessing and grace. It was a blessing. It was grace to have that taken away from me, to see that wasn't real. And what was beautiful about it was, because it didn't come through a particular religious practice, I was able to talk to anyone about it. I didn't have to say, join this religion and then it will be taken off you. Because obviously we've heard stories like that. It was just through a deeper understanding of the mind. And I've just been committed to that work ever since. And the new book, The Inside Out Revolution, that's my first real attempt at going full out. Like Super Coach, I talked about what I'd learned from it, in a way. In this book, I've just shared what it is I saw. And I hope, I know actually, because it's already happening, that other people will get to have that same experience.
When you, talking about Super Coach, when you've worked with many people, what would you say your job is as a coach when somebody comes to see you and says, what is it you do?
Well, I'll give you the secret answer, which won't be a secret anymore, which is I think I'm there to wake them up to their soul, to wake them up to the power inside them, to that intelligence and energy in life that we're all a part of, that we cut off from and then try and empower ourselves. So we try and find this power, this willpower, and make ourselves succeed and be happy and do things, when actually we're hooked up to this much, much greater power that everyone's got access to. It doesn't matter what your religion or no religion. I mean, I've had this chat with Jehovah's Witnesses and atheists. Everyone gets it at some level. Nobody really thinks they're in charge. But boy, do we act like we are. And the analogy that I'll often use is trying to do things the way we're taught to do them, the empowered way. It's like having a sailboat and thinking, okay, let me work on my lung power. And I'm going to blow this sailboat. And if I do it hard enough, it'll move. And sometimes I'll catch a current and it can move quite quickly. And I think, look what I did. But sailboats aren't designed to run that way. Sailboats are designed to catch the wind. And that creative force, that wind, that power of mind that all of us have, if we let it, if we get that it's there, we see what's in the way, it will take us places. And so with my clients, I'm trying to connect them back up with that, because once they've got that connection and they understand why they lose it when they lose it, because we all lose it, right? None of us live there 24/7. But if you know why you lose it when you lose it, you don't lose it for long. And their lives take off. And so it doesn't matter what they do. You know, I often use the analogy of Bill Gates. Bill Gates had amnesia and came to you for business coaching. Mm-hmm. Are you going to share your 7 strategies for success? Or are you going to try and wake him up to the fact that he's Bill Gates, knowing that once he wakes up to that, he's going to be able to take care of his own life? Well, it's the same thing. We all have access to that kind of wisdom, that kind of genius. But we don't know it's there a lot of the time. Or we suspect it's there, but we don't think we can have it because we're not worthy, we haven't worked hard enough, we haven't done this. Or we don't understand why we're not getting it. And so we look in the wrong direction to fix what isn't broken. And so we don't get to live that way. It's available to anyone. And it just so happens, if you're already high achieving and you find it, you can make a much more obviously dramatic shift in the world. If you haven't done much and you find it, you're on your way. It might take longer to show up in the eyes of the world, but you get the benefits of it immediately.
As far as kids coming out of schools, universities, the economy is slightly challenging all over the world. What do you think the best assets are? What should people focus on? What should they do?
Well, it's a great question. I've not been asked that one. Honestly, the best asset anyone could have coming out of school or even at any stage is to recognize, A, there is an absolute foolproof way to navigate through life. That if you learn that inner guidance system, it will take you places way beyond what you could create with a goal list. It will guide you step by step like a GPS. Knowing that is incredibly powerful, because that means that you come out into the world trusting yourself. And that's powerful. The other is recognizing that the next great idea isn't out there. It's somewhere, I don't even know if it's in here, it's before thought. It's in the unknown. It's going to come at you out of a clear blue sky. It's going to come into your head when there's nothing else much on your mind. And if you recognize those two things, I can trust this inner guidance system, and the next idea that's going to change the world is going to come through me, not from out there, and not from something I've already learned, although it might connect the dots. Then you're really free to just go out and enjoy your life, follow your nose, and you will, I promise you, create not only a life of value in the world, but a life that you love. And I mean, this is what I say, you know, if you really get that we can live an inner-directed life, then you might wind up having a wonderful life and driving a Porsche. You might wind up having a wonderful life and driving a bicycle. Either way, you get to have a wonderful life. And that takes the pressure off.